That's what Dos Equis sometimes can do. And they got to teasing me about being a country boy and what make the possum soul. And so I started talking about it, and Dr. Porter says, you ought to do that. You need to do that. And so I collected up a whole bunch of possums, which, you know, they're easy to catch, really. And so I had 13 possums, and they wouldn't let me keep them on Vanderbilt campus because it's indigenous. They don't let you keep indigenous species, but I had to get all the permits and everything. And so I lived on the edge of Nashville, and every day I had the research conditions and the control conditions, and so I would go up in the bushes and get I had a bunch of cages that I was the eagle, or I was the lab manager of the neuropsychobiology lab for a bunch of years when I was there. So I took the equipment and I housed them way up in the woods at my house on the edge of town. And I'd go up in the bushes every day, and I had to shake them and make them death feign, and then I would time them from 2 different locations, close by or in a blind. And the statistics were amazingly complicated for such a design. But anyway, about a year later, it was time to do the neuropsych testing sequence in the program, and I was switching over to do more work with human animals. And the guy next door had about 8 kids. And they were perfect for the IQ testing portion because I could test all their different age level IQs. He said, but before I let you test my children, I got to ask you a question. What's that? He said, well, about a year ago, every afternoon about sunset, you'd go up there in the bushes. It's like you was having a fit or something. And I thought, oh, that was my possum research. So before he turned me loose with doing research on his kids, he had to know why I was going up there in the bushes. I guess he didn't know I was shaking possums. But it was pretty clear. But anyway, it was a pretty funny moment for me. But anyway, so I may be the only published animal behaviorist doing this. Let me run this back a second. Of a paper I presented for the Society for Scientific Exploration. Those of you that don't know the SSE, Google SSE, Scientific Exploration, join it because they do all kinds of anomalous things. And their journal for the public consumption is called Edge Science. So they like to do science on the edge, and it's a whole bunch of credentialed scientists that you can publish. You know, you can publish studies of the dogs. One of the famous guys, Rupert Sheldrake, did a study on whether dogs can tell when their owner's about to come home. They have some sort of mental connection. But anyway, I presented for them twice, and this is part of it. Y'all know, and it's an allusion to Frank Beach's paper, The Snark Was a Boojum. The Snark Was a Boojum comes from Lewis Carroll's story, but it's when we switched over from comparative psychology to ethology. And it's kind of an inside joke, but a boojum is like a Bigfoot. A boojum is a big, hairy boogeyman. So the way I got started with this current vector of research is I discovered Robert W. Morgan. And I'll pass this around. You see the book on my bookshelf. And when you get through, just give it back to me or whatever. But the bottom line is that Robert W. Morgan says they are forest people. They are a people, and you should respect them as such. And he says if you really want to have an encounter, go to the woods where they are, preferably at 4 o'clock in the morning, by yourself, without a gun, and leave your light off. Right. I'm going to tell you, the place that I'm going to show you where I had the tree pushed over, I could not even get out of the truck at night. I pulled up and I go, whoa, those looks like some good woods. And I'm an old coon hunter. I'm used to having dogs and buddies with me. And I had to go literally 1 step at a time, actually about 25 steps at a time, into the woods at night under Morgan's recommended conditions. And so that helped. But before I did that, I had another method. Everybody says, make them come to you. You can't hunt these guys. These are masters of the forest, ninjas of the woods. And these are my mules. And I learned that from coon hunting. If you ride a mule particularly a small one. It keeps you out of the snakes, and if you don't have a tall mule, you don't have to duck very much. But these are affectionately known, they're Shetland mules or Welsh mules, but most people call them shed asses. And they will jump up in the truck. They will jump up in the truck. So the way I entice these, everything I say today, I want you to put the word ostensible in front of, or purported, meaning possibly, because I'm the Sergeant Schultz of Bigfoot. I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing. So it's all hypothetical, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't really think that these hypotheticals were really something worthy to show you. So I was out feeding my mules and training them in the middle of the night. This was the day that we had the ice storm after the Saints won the Super Bowl. In Louisiana, we measure everything before Saints and after Saints. Not really, but that's how I remember it. It was the ice storm after the Super Bowl. I was giving them a midnight snack, and I had my little pit bull bird dog with me. And she was just really nervous about something down by the pond, and the mules couldn't eat for watching the pond. I thought, well, maybe it's a coyote or something. So I took my Q-beam and I shone it down by the pond, and I caught this big greenish yellow eye peeking around this tree. And you can see where he has been peeling bark. This guy stayed behind this tree off and on for a long, long time. I mean, this was an ongoing thing. So when I went to look near there, my dog pointed. She's half pit bull, half bird dog, but she likes feces, so we call her a turd dog. And she pointed this thing, but she was trembling. She was like, you know, and I said, what is it? What is it, girl? And I looked under the pine straw. I wouldn't have found it if it wasn't for her. This is about 2 inches in diameter. They were actually 2 sausages. It's what's called a Bristol type 2 stool. And I carefully gathered it up, and you can see compared to the icy cup over there, how big it is. I took it to my veterinarian friend, and the receptionist said, maybe it's Bigfoot. And then she proceeded to tell me her story about her brother seeing one. But Dr. Remain Nameless asked not to be associated with, but he said, I use Texas A&M. We sent it off to the A&M lab, and they told us they did not know the species of the feces. And they said it looks human, but it's not human. They said it is probably a consumer of offal, meaning liver, kidneys, heart, things like that. Not that it doesn't eat other meat, but based on the characteristics, they said it was a meat eater that ate throwaway meats that we don't like. I went back right after I turned in the scat sample to my vet friend's office, and I went back out there, and sure enough, on the top strand, there were these clumps of hair. And I was trying to send them to Henner Fehrenbach, but I sent them, a guy told me to send them to Dr. Melba Ketchum, and I accidentally, like Forrest Gump, I accidentally got in the Erickson Project. And this is sample number 22 in the Sasquatch genome. The hair blasted to the Y chromosome, and we thought it was a young male that was left over. Yesterday, for those of you here, I showed that I thought that the property we were on was basically a Sasquatch school, where they learned about, as little bitty guys, they learned about human beings. There was a chimp retirement facility nearby, a prison nearby where it's like a human zoo. And I showed you the blind yesterday where they could sit and watch. Here is the first blind that I found, or nest. It's hard to see there, but it's an X covered over by some vines. And about 8 feet away is an exact prototype, not quite as well built. So it looks like that they are trying to teach the young ones some of the skills. Now you can't see down here, but there's 2 lesions on this pine tree. And you know we can eat pine bark. How many people know that we can eat the intercambium of pine bark? So there's 2 lesions right there where something has gouged out and taken a big, what looks like a handful of pine bark You can't see the second one, it got cropped off, but there's a miniature version of the exact same thing. So it looks like a little guy is imitating maybe mama. Of course, that's speculation. Nearby, there is a room with a view. I showed you yesterday the nest. This is just past the nest. It is a cave in a creek bank. It's a pretty nice cave, and it's got a skylight. I think you have to pay more for the cave with the skylight. Here is some hair. I found hair later on, and you can see it's reddish, and it's on the top strand. Melba had closed her study by the time this hair manifested, but so it didn't get in. But the first hair was a male. She said she believed it morphologically was compatible with all the others she thought was Sasquatch. So when we started coming out to this property, pretty soon this triangle appeared. And it's woven together at the corners. And then this is and I'm gonna tip my hat to Kawani again. This is later, after the Erickson project was over. After the Erickson project was over, I was needing to switch gears, and I'm gonna get to the Kawani slide in a minute. Here's another mobile. This is a piece of forest that's famous for woolly boogers. I showed you, how many people saw this yesterday? It's one of the most amazing things I've found. It's a mobile in the woods, and basically it has a swinging phallus kind of a thing. And next door to it is a phallus that is at about a 45-degree angle. So, you know, is it a tease or a come on to a young girl Sasquatch? I don't know. Here's a possible nest area from the Bossier Parish site. And not far from here, something stomped so loud that the person who was with me won't go back out there anymore. And this was found in the trail. I found softball, baseball, and this is not extremely far out in the wilderness, but it's certainly unusual. And you find certain things like this. And of course, we do know that they throw us knuckleballs. If you look close, you'll see he's fixing to deliver a knuckleball to that batter. All right, so here is my turn toward the shamanic. I had about 12 places I was going, and my efforts were really dissipated, and I was frustrated. So I thought, what can I do? And I read this book called Psychic Sasquatch. Okay, I'll explain this picture to you. There's my cap that I wore a lot, my cap that I wore in the woods. You need to wear the same thing, or at least I believe you do. Need to be easily identifiable to the critters of the forest. And here's Psychic Sasquatch, which is now in my mind, okay? And this is my vehicle. This is my shamanic vehicle. This is the rain stick. How many of you know what a rain stick is? So I started doing different things. And this bone was a gift. This bone was in the trail on the way back, and it was not in the trail on the way out. This rock was a probable gift too. It's shaped like a heart. How many of you have seen my brain rock? I'm gonna pass this around again. Y'all can take a look at that brain rock. I've been given brains on more than a few occasions, and I have no idea how these guys associate me with brains, but I am a brain scientist. I'm a neuropsychologist by day. So at any rate, I began to realize that I needed to take a different approach, and I began to use some of Kawani's ideas as I would go to the woods and try to commune with these beings. And I began to try to open up. And, you know, you always want to say, am I fooling myself? You know, is this my imagination? Or, you know, is this sensation I'm having? How many of you got the sizzle? How many of you know what the sizzle is? The sizzle is when you're walking in territory and all of a sudden you feel the presence of something that is pretty awesome. And, you know, is that just a random adrenaline firing, or is there something communicative going on? So here's what Blob Squatch says. Blob Squatch says, I'm trying to find a profile photo, but every one of them is so freaking blurry. All right, so the two locations that I found, I contacted Kawani and I said, I hear you do map dowsing. He said, I sure do. And so I sent him a whole bunch of maps, and he sent them back with red marks all over them. Don't go here. They're not friendly here. They don't want interaction with humans here. And the two that he sent me that were good, I have used, and this is the data I'm bringing you today. And he circled this spot that you're seeing right here. This is what sold me on Kawani lapsaritis. He had no idea that I had been out to these locations and what I'd done. I was careful not to tell him as a control on this experiment. And he circled this spot right here and said, make your camp here. Actually, it was about maybe 100 yards in toward the bayou from here. But it was really, really close. And he said there are three of them there. There's a mom, a dad, and a junior. And about a year before, a deer hunter had put out some peanut butter and he thought it was a bear at first. He saw it for about 20, 30 seconds. Walking on two legs, brown, approximately the color of that wood panel. And he didn't see it get the peanut butter, but it was walking very agile fashion on two legs. And he told us the whole story of the sighting. So this guy was about 5 foot tall, about the time when Kawani circled on the map and said, make your camp here. All right, so how many of you saw the video yesterday with the black figure leaping off the screen? So it's not just a blob squatch, it's a blob squatch that it's about half a second, and you can see it go like this. He's coming down a fire lane, it's a fire lane, and he sees me apparently in his home like Goldilocks, you know, and I'm gonna play the wood knock for you in a minute. And M.K. Davis amplified the wood knock for me. So you hear the wood knock, and I'm just narrating the whole thing, and then this guy comes on scene, and then you see him leaping off in a plyometric move. All right, here he is. You see the black figure. He's already starting to lean in that one. And I don't have him in the best sort of order. You see him leaning a little bit more there. And you see him starting to jump. You can see it's actually his left knee and right elbow is back, and he's putting his head down like a football player hitting the guard spot or whatever. And he's getting out of my view, and that's a little more distant. The more distant it is, naturally, the clearer the figure is. Uh-oh. And then he's gone, and then he's gone. And I've had trouble getting that video to play well on the internet. I post all my stuff on Facebook because there's no other place to put it except SSE, and that's once every year or so, and you got to rush then. So you can leisurely look at all my stuff on Facebook. So the landowner, Ronnie, named this guy Thunder because he made some huge noises. And he had named him Thunder before this incident. But this is when I began camping out at the other place. Ronnie was out with his dogs one night about midnight, and it was a little bit of a moon out, and he was going down the bayou, and he said, what kind of vines are those? And he was looking, and he said it looked like fur. And then I saw like a knee, and it looked like, he said, I realized that this was that Sasquatch hanging upside down over the bayou. So he was hanging with his feet and legs entwined in the vines, and he said, I didn't see him grab the beaver, but I heard it. And he said, all of a sudden a big splash and a whole bunch of noise and wham, 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 wham. He said it was the most violent thing. He said, this is the guy's a trapper and a hunter for years. He says, the most violent thing I've ever seen in the woods. And then about 2 days later, he and his dogs found this backbone with the spinal canal hollowed out. Now I want to ask you, what kind of coyote, what kind of coon can take a stick and hollow out a spinal canal? I don't know, but we found this to be very unusual. And this is what we refer to in the research album as the beaver murder. So, and here's a probable track. If you squint your eyes, you can see these tracks a little bit better. You can see the halux is probably a right foot. Okay, now, you hear the wood knock, and then half a minute or so later, you see Papa coming down the lane. And I searched and searched and searched, and I think I have found the wood knocker. So I think that's the wood knocker, because that's the direction the wood knock came from. And then he seems to be going back. And then here's thunder, and you see he's stepping into the frame right there. Somebody's in my house. Is Junior okay? Did they get Junior? And we call him Junior. We don't know their real names. I wish I had somebody that could. All right, so here he is. This is the last look at thunder. You can see the knee right there, the elbow, the plyometric push with the right foot. His head's down as he's going into that bush, and he's gone. Half a second he gave me. Now, Ronnie has seen him several times, but I got to see it myself. I mean, you know, I respect everybody's report unless they're a known hoaxer, but Webb's got to see it himself. All right, I'm going to play this for you. This is the wood knock. And again, thanks to M.K. Davis for amplifying this. The first recording is a wood knock from a video in the Caddo Parish area that I'm showing with the block spot pictures. Here's a wood knock. It's amplified. Again. Okay, so that's area 1. Now, area 2, which I'm going to spend some time. Now, the show that we did last year that we had the big argument with the kill group and we were no kill, that was filmed in the location that you just heard about, the location we've just been talking about. The other location that Kawani identified for me is the one where the marble game took place. I call it the Boo Radley game. How many of you are familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird? Boo Radley would put stuff in the hollow of the tree. But these guys play games with you, apparently, to see how much you can pick up on subtleties. You know, is it real? Is it your imagination? Is somebody doing this? Now, probably the apex of my work with these beings occurred on November the 11th. And what happened was I had a site that we began to use. And what happened was I was walking out. I was in there by myself. I tried to go by myself as much as I could. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the scream I'm going to play is not that scream, but it's very similar. The scream I'm fixing to play is about 200 yards away. But I'm walking out, and I get about 50 yards down the trail, and I hear a scream like this. And I'll tell you the rest of the story in just a minute. Okay, so that was amplified later on, and now I'm going to play for you from area B, a scream that's off in the distance, probably almost 200 yards. Kawani said they would try to intimidate me. And I'm going to play it again. Once again, not advertised. All right, that's the screen. And here are a few tracks. This is one of a couple of tracks that we found. Here's one, that was the best one. Here's another one. Again, we think that it is a mom, an offspring. I think this one's female. I'll tell you privately. And Papa. And Papa sometimes stenches, not very often. I don't get stench very much anymore. So I've had 5 trees pushed over near me on this location. 2 with witnesses. I was camping about 50 yards further down there, and I think it was Kawani that said, if you take a buddy with you, separate yourself. Somebody advised me, don't camp together, camp at least 50 yards to 100 yards apart from each other. So David was about 50, 60 yards further down. In the middle of the night, we heard, it was no wind, about 74 degrees, crack, crash, boom. And I thought it was this tree from where I was. My head was to this direction. But it probably was this tree, because this tree is about 10 or 15 yards away from that other tree. And here's what appears to be a place where some creature, some being got a foothold and pushed. And I was in my hammock. This is the insider's view of my research. So not too long after that, I was solo camping at that very same spot, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's kind of hard for me to get a good night's sleep, in these circumstances. And I just about drifted off, and I was kind of, waking back up. And all of a sudden, crack, crash, boom. This time it wasn't behind me. It was about 40 yards, 50 yards that away, and it was close. And I felt, if those of you that have seen the interview on KWKH, my belly started rumbling like a bowl full of Jell-O, like the old Santa Claus thing. And I'm looking down at my stomach, I had a little, I always keep a little light where I can, kind of get myself oriented. And I could see my viscera I could feel it, and it was rumbling, and I thought, what in the world? And I thought, oh, that must be infrasound. I think it was a male, and I was scared to death because I'm about 2.7 miles from the truck, and I'm in my sock feet, and it's a bunch of palmettos and not a small number of rattlesnakes and things like that. I said, oh my goodness. So I started talking to it. I started to, I couldn't remember my Tarzan words from childhood. Do you remember Tarzan? I mean, if you talk to the animals, Ungawa, I didn't want him to Ungawa, I wanted him to be friends. So I said, I'm your friend. I want to be your friend. Please don't frighten me. And as soon as I said that, it stopped. My belly stopped shaking. As soon as I asked this entity to not frighten me. And then nothing happened. I had the sizzle. The sizzle was just all over me. I felt the presence. Lasted for probably 30 minutes, and then nothing else happened. I kept expecting the hammock to part and this big hairy face looking down on me. But it was my first real moment of truth. Then I had my kayak bivouacked at a different spot. And it was, at any rate, I noticed that something was messing with my canned goods. I put my canned goods down in the foot of the kayak, and I had it covered over because I didn't want anybody to get it. And I thought it was a very good spot. And I had really very little evidence of other people coming out there. And something was rifling through my stuff. And the first thing that I noticed was there was an old piece of a milk carton that had shown up there, and it had teeth marks in it. And I thought they looked like human type teeth, and sure enough, my forensic dentist guy says that they did appear to be human-like teeth. Something had chewed on this old milk carton or some kind of carton of food. And then the first thing that really got my attention after that was I came down to this place, I've camped there several times, and there was this can in the tree. And I thought, oh my goodness, what could put a can in the tree? So my whole rule out now, this is, in my opinion, this is either a Sasquatch or I've got a sociopathic forest ranger that doesn't have anything better to do than mess with me for about 6 months at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I started trying to leave out things to get whoever's attention. And I started leaving I left some apples, and the apples rotted off the tree the first week. I left some pork skins because I knew that Sasquatch probably liked to eat pig. Never touched them. But the funny thing is no other animals would touch it. No animals touch this stuff. It was really amazing. And then I put a fritter in the fork of this tree. And I try to use trees where, you know, if animals of any weight climb up in it, it'll be bent over and I'll know what's going on. Can't be sure. Now, I'm low tech on purpose. People say, why don't you use this, that, and the other? I have a FLIR. I have game cams. I do use my hearing enhancement, but I try to stay low tech. And the way I explained it succinctly yesterday was, if I'm trying to be your friend and you found that I put up a game cam in your bedroom or your breakfast room, that's not going to help our friendship, is it? So I'm really trying to do it a totally different way. There's a lot of people out there with game cams. I'm trying to be different, and I want them to know I'm different. So they love apple fritters. These guys do, and they start taking them regularly. We started having a fritter thing. One day there weren't any fritters, and my wife went with me that time, and she said, "Get one of those Danish things. They'll like that." No, it's got too many chemistry things on the side. Whoever it was took a bite, and by the way, I think it's the youngster, because I think Dad doesn't really approve of this, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Because, well, there's some subtleties, but took one bite of this apple strudel thing and threw it on the ground. Not eating that. The only thing, there were a few ants on it, but it was there the next day when I came back. But man, do they like Amish sticky bread. My wife brought home some Amish sticky bread from my mother-in-law's, and, you know, whoever got this took the whole tray, sticky bread, everything, and it was like, you could see it was and so the first time they ever opened a jar for me was to get this Amish sticky bread. I put it in there, and I put the lid on in a medium way, came back, and the jar is open. Oh my God, we are on it. We're on a roll now. And that night, so the night that I found that is when the scream happened. So I come down there and I go, oh my God, they opened the jar. Wow. And as I go to check on the apple, I could hear something backing away from the brush toward the bayou. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And the apple was halfway eaten. It was a really beautiful, maybe Fuji or one of those really juicy apples. But they do appear to like better apples, better than, sorry apples. And there's a drop of juice hanging from the apple. That's how fresh the situation was. And I'm thinking, oh, somebody was just eating that apple. And I'm like, really kind of afraid, excited. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm by myself. So I get out my fritter and I put the fritter back and all that sort of stuff, and I reset everything. And I did the video. You can see that I got so excited when I got home that I lost the video, and I had to do a note on my Facebook. But anyway, so I'm heading back out, and I'm about 50 yards down the trail, 40, 50 yards down the trail, and at my 2 o'clock position, something screams at me, like that scream you heard, except just preternaturally loud. Just made me double over. I just literally bent over. And I had a little walking stick and I had a knocking stick. And so I just sat down Indian style in the trail. I mean, what are you going to do? Whoever this is right there. The truck is yonder way. I'm fine. And I said, I had a little talk with myself. This is why you do this. What are you going to do? This is your chance. I mean, and the other side of me is going, yeah, but did you hear that? I mean, it was like, And so I sat down and I knocked, and I heard a little quiet knock back, barely, and knock, knock, and knock, knock. And something plays a knocking game with me for a few minutes. And I think, oh, the fritter. So I make myself, and this is very difficult. That's 50 long yards back to the tree, the fritter tree. I turn around and I go back to the fritter tree, and it is gone. The fritter was taken behind my back, and I'm going to show you who I think did it. I think it was Mom and Junior, and I'll show you in a minute. But I think she was worried about Junior, and I was in between them. So she decided to give me the old intimidation bit, the David Copperfield misdirection, while they vanished the Statue of Liberty. So anyway, that was the zenith. And after that, my comfort zone went from just real challenge to real comfortable. And it was a couple of nights after that with my hearing enhancer, I could hear somebody walking on 2 legs toward me, and I started taking an extra fritter, and I thought, I'm gonna get them going where they take the fritter and I go put another one, they take the fritter and I go put another. Nope, not gonna play that game with Doc, no sir. They wouldn't do that. But I found myself holding up a fritter in the sliver of moonlight like the Statue of Liberty while something's walking toward me, probably as close as that green door, or maybe a little bit closer. And we both had a lot of ambivalence about that moment. And I decided, you know, at some point, time to walk onto the truck. And that would be, so, you know, I feel like I've gotten really close to inviting them to step out, but they have not. They've done a lot of things besides stepping out. But so here's the food tree. Here's where the scream happened. Here's my truck. It's about 4/10 of a mile to the truck from here. And I posted some stuff, and I have a couple of people. I don't really do this, so my disclaimer is, I don't search for the things in the faces in the forest. The green man, y'all know about the green man in England? That, you know, he's got a green face and you can see him picking out of the trees. A lot of people do that. So people do it on my Facebook page, and I just allow it. I say thank you for your efforts. I don't. This one I think is particularly interesting. You can see it best right here. So you see here's the shoulders and the head. And down here you can see, if you look close, it looks like a little one. And you can see what appears to be a face right here, standing right by. And so I think this might be Mom and Junior. I don't know. This was the other was a boy. That's a before and after picture. I've had two melons. I use melons that are just big enough that other fauna can't cart them off. Somebody appears to have used a fingernail to maybe carve this melon. They left the triangle off of the melon. I usually put a triangle on them. Here's another jar that's open. Now the reason I think it's more than one is because sometimes the jar was tightened, and sometimes the food would be partially gone. There was a little hole in the top of the jar, and sometimes it would be very, very tightly screwed on, and sometimes the lid would be off. So it seemed to be some entity that knew how to take the lid off, and some entity who was confused about righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This looks like a fingernail right there, trying to get into this thing. So the jar was opened multiple times and closed apparently multiple times, but once for certain, where they put the jar back on. Here's the bunny. I was talking to somebody about this last night. Somebody told me that they have issues with faces, and that they put out some stuffed monkeys, and they would always tear the face off the monkeys. This is a little stuffed rabbit with really nice, realistic eyes, and I put it right at the foot of the food tree, came back, and the left eye is plucked out. Those of you that follow M.K. Davis might be familiar with the toy that has the camera in the eye socket. And something hairy is seen to pick up the toy at M.K.'s video, pull the eye out, and reach in and get the camera and set the camera down on the bench. So, and then my wife says, put this book out there. And it's a bear, it's a false fur covered thing. And when I came back, something had rubbed the fur off the top of this book. So here's the thing to think about. What kind of coyote is going to do this? We have coyotes, we have wild hogs, we have deer, we don't have bear. What's going to pull the eye? What kind of animal fools with toys in the woods? Now, I know your dog will. Here's a teddy bear, and they pull the ear off. They pull the fur off the ear. It's like they're trying to see, what is this fur made out of? Then I came back on March the 1st, and Teddy's had his nose torn off. Look at there. So they got issues with faces. And you know, from tonic immobility, my research that I told you about at the beginning, it's geared on eyeballs. What makes a rabbit go thorn, if you read Watership Down, what makes a rabbit freeze and all other prey animals freeze is the eyes. We've isolated it. You take the wings of the hawk and you put it over the rabbit, that won't do it. You put the talons, that won't do it. But when you put the hawk's eyeballs over the rabbit stops. And all of them will stop. So it's the eyes have it. I've had things that I consider to be gifts given to me a couple of times. I've had 2 walking sticks. This was at the head of the trail. One was entwined in some vines at the food tree as if, thank you for the apple or something like that. This is a shotgun shell that was bitten. My dentist says that is a large human-like molar that bit that